I love this for Chandler, despite him having so many more losses than wins in this fantastically fun UFC run, because it really gives him the chance to revive himself against a guy who's good to very good in Paddy. But I think any opponent is going to look at him and go, okay, I think I can do some things against him.
You know, one of the problems at 155 is that these top 5-6 guys have been unwilling to give the next guy, like you say, drop the ladder down and see if they can climb. Michael Chandler seems to be at a point in his career where he's going, I'll leave that ladder for the next guy, see if he can climb the mountain. But if he can't, that'll be a massive win for Chandler. But one thing Paddy Pimblett better realize, Shale, he cannot get hit by Iron Mike, because Mike will shut your lights out with those big right hands.
If you're getting touched by guys who really shouldn't be giving you a problem, right? And Paddy Pimblett, because he came in with so much hype, has this Liverpool fan base, he came into the UFC, Luigi Vendramini, Rodrigo Vargas, Jordan Levitt, none of those guys should have been anywhere near him. And all of them hurt him at some point in the fight. And whenever I see that, I go, God, it's going to be a problem as you move up. 55 is a talented division. Justin Gaethje is going to knock your ass out if you take that punch the way you did against Jordan Levitt or these other guys coming up. And so his hitability is an issue. And he's facing the one guy who can start you with one punch, and that's his best way to victory. That's how Mike fights.
I believe he will know right away within the first exchange he's not stepping into the octagon with Bobby Green, with Tony Ferguson, with some of these guys that he has fought. It's just a different level. And I still believe where I'm at, it's a bad matchup stylistically for him. That first time he gets hit by one of the toughest punchers in the UFC lightweight division, which he has not faced yet, it's going to be a different feeling. It's going to be a different speed. It's going to be a different ferocity that he hasn't felt before. And as I said, I think Paddy's still got a bright future. I think Paddy will always be a fan favorite, but I do believe he's got some momentum right now, and the Paddy train stops in Miami.
Paddy is very hittable. Michael Chandler fucking throws the absolute dogs when he's out there. This is fantastic matchmaking, a phenomenal addition to the card. The only part for me, BC, is the guy sat out basically 2 years of his career to get a Charles Oliveira rematch that he lost, and now he's fighting Paddy Pimblett in non-title co-mains. These are not small figures necessarily, but oh Jesus, this guy gave up a lot for not much in return. I do feel bad for him in that regard.
I'm glad to see Michael Chandler, getting back into action and not sitting around waiting and, seeing what Connor's going to do again and maybe, I don't know, maybe moving on from that whole debacle that he was in. I like the excitement. I like that we get Paddy Pimblett in another kind of marquee matchup. And part of me is happy to see Michael Chandler get a little bit of a favorable matchup. With all due respect, the guy needs a win, and I think this is one of those matchups to where he's probably going to be the favorite, and then there's a good chance that he does get that win.
To win this fight, Chandler needs to utilize the calf kick from the outside, use his feints. That's going to be huge. Attack the body, not avoid the clinch, because if he clinches Paddy's going to tie him up, and if Paddy can't take him down with a trip or a judo sweep, something, he's going to pull guard. He's going to jump guard with him. And I think that's literally all he has to do to win. Paddy leaves his chin up. When there's an opportunity to go body head, clapped. You can crack the shit out of him.
He's going to get clapped.
Or you look at some of his fights that he's had. I mean, some of these things are just stylistic matchups where it's like, well, there was no way it was going to turn into a war against this guy or that guy. But he's seen some adversity. His first fight in the UFC got dropped. And whoever that guy was, I forget what his name was and who he was, but he don't hit half as hard as I do. So we'll see. We'll test his chin. We'll test his gall. We'll test his championship mentality. We'll test his cardio. We will test his heart. Paddy Pimblett will be tested more than he has ever been tested in his entire life in April, just 7 short weeks away. And it's the biggest opportunity of his life. Does he rise to the occasion or does he sink? It remains to be seen.
He's always entertaining. But the point that I'm making here is that Charles Oliveira
who has the most submissions in the history of the UFC and the most bonuses and is a former champion, he couldn't submit Michael Chandler. So if he can't, more than likely Paddy Pimblett won't catch him. Now that doesn't mean that Paddy can't get a takedown, although I do think he will struggle in the wrestling department against Iron Mike Chandler because his wrestling is phenomenal. We just don't see it, but that's his bread and butter, okay? He's a shorter, very, very stocky, strong, athletic guy. So I think Paddy's going to struggle to get a takedown.
Paddy particularly has a vulnerability with this style. He just eats punches that he shouldn't be eating against guys who don't have knockout power. Mike has knockout power. Mike doesn't have a ton of versatility. He throws the same kind of jab and right hand every single time. Boom, boom, right? And you know, if you can time it properly, you can take him down. You can have success against a guy with halfway decent movement. You know, fighting Mike's like fighting a scarecrow. He's just, you know, he doesn't have the footwork to corral anybody necessarily. So it's the idea that if Paddy had that next level footwork or next level striking, he could do something. I think he has trouble in his fight simply because his one kryptonite is the one thing Michael Chandler does very, very well.
But fighting Michael Chandler off a loss, if there's ever a time to not have to face that son of a bitch, it's off a loss. I've been following Michael Chandler since he was a collegiate athlete at Missouri. And he wasn't undefeated. But boy, you'd have a hard time going and finding 2 matches in a row that he lost. It's an interesting time for both these guys. I love the fight. And I feel like it is strengthening my previous hypothesis, which is Paddy's only 2 fights away. 2 fights away from the world title if they're the right fights. And this is one of those 2. But it certainly qualifies as the right fight.
Paddy's good. He's growing. I think the pressure I'm going to put on him, he's obviously going to keep that evading, throwing a lot of kicks, kind of throwing some wild punches, trying to keep things interesting in there because he knows when one of these hands lands, it's going to be different than Jordan Levitt. It's going to be different than Bobby Green. It's going to be different than a lot of the guys that he has fought. But I'm up to the challenge. Prove me right, prove me wrong. Let's see what happens.
Awesome. But did you win? Did you become the champion like he was back in Bellator? Because that was the plan. And listen, I'm not knocking Michael Chandler. I'm a fan of the guy and I'm a big, big fan of his fights. But you've got to win. First and foremost, that's what we're here to do. You don't sacrifice and go through all the blood, sweat and tears unless you want to win, okay? So he's got to fight smart in this one. He's got to know that Paddy's going to be looking to chip away with low kicks to start, just like he did against Bobby Green. And he's going to be on his bike. He's going to be dancing around and probably looking for a takedown. I just think it's a really, really tricky one for Paddy Pimblett in terms of a stylistic matchup.
Like, I don't even know how to describe Michael Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett, but that is just fun. It is extremely fun. I actually think the matchmaking is brilliant. It's a chance for Chandler to get back on track. It's a somewhat righting of the wrong of the Conor situation. Paddy not on the level of Conor, but pretty damn famous. You can make the case top 10 most famous fighters in the UFC right now in the sport. So you get a win over Paddy. You're the guy who gives him his first loss in the UFC. It's a nice consolation prize.
And it's a 5-rounder. So I'm looking at it. I don't think it's going to go 5 rounds. I know Paddy said he doesn't get knocked out, but like you said, Chandler's going to throw bombs. And it even in that division, right? Islam's looking for new contenders. So if Chandler goes out there, gets a knockout, or even Paddy Pimblett goes out there, gets a win, I can see one of those guys skipping the line because he said even if Gaethje wins against Hooker, I'd rather fight him, right? I don't want to keep fighting these rematches. So both these guys, there's title implications no matter what. Like Chandler could lose 8 in a row. If he wins 1 by crazy knockout, they'll give him a title shot.
That changes the game. That changes the fucking
It changes the game.
Both of those guys wing punches from their armpits. Paddy floats his chin. Paddy's good at jiu-jitsu. Michael Chandler is an explosive beast of an athlete. Dude, Paddy Pimblett has never faced anybody as explosive as Michael Chandler is going to be.